Ois Dalit. The Frierdiker Rebbe is now going to give the reason why Chassidim thought that his elder Vetter Reb Nachum moved to be in Haditch, near the Alter Rebbe's Tzion, which actually will turn out to be not the right reason. Afterwards he's going to explain. Reb Nachum himself revealed the reason later on. It says the Frierdiker Rebbe, in the year B'shnas Tovkuf Ayin Beis, in the year Tovkuf Ayin Beis, throughout the battle of Napoleon, that war, the Alter Rebbe escaped together with his entire family and many Chassidim that were all traveling with 60 wagons, in addition to all those traveling on foot, journeying on foot. They all left. It was Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Re'ei Chavtes Menachem Av, which is Erev Chodesh Elul. They all left Liadi. And based on the counsel, the suggestion of the generals of the Russian army, the Alter Rebbe had to escape from Napoleon through the city Bayev. However, the Alter Rebbe said that we're going to be traveling to Krasna. And he hastened all his family members to travel quickly, as quick as possible, to cross over the Dnieper River. When the Alter Rebbe traveled around two parsois, the Yarst, from Liadi, he told everybody that they should quickly cross the Dnieper, and then he commanded that they should ask from the soldiers that were traveling with his entourage on behalf of the Russian army to send them and to guard them throughout their entire journey. The Russian army sent them. He asked of them for a small wagon, a light wagon that should be harnessed to two horses, good horses, with two kutchers, two horsemen. And together with soldiers that are armed, and the Alter Rebbe joined himself with another two people, and they swiftly traveled back, tremendous speed, back to Lubavitch, to Liadi, and he went to his house, and he commanded the people they should search well throughout his entire house, maybe lest there's something left of his belongings. They found in the boydin, in the attic, two pantofel, two stekshel, two slippers that were rubbed out, that belonged to the Alter Rebbe, and they found katzelkis, which is the rolling pins, and an old sifter. And he said to them, we should take it with us and quickly light the whole house on fire. The Alter Rebbe was with them. He benched at that point the people of the city, and he quickly traveled back towards his entourage that was already 2 yards away. Just as the Alter Rebbe left the city from one side of the city in the direction that goes towards the Dnieper, came the first courier of the Napoleon army and or the first soldiers. From the other side, they came into the city of Liadi. After a little bit of time, Napoleon was right in their tracks, and Napoleon came into Liadi. He came together with obviously his ministers and his riders and the horses, tremendous horses, and he quickly went to the home of the Rabbeinu Agadol, the Alter Rebbe, and when he saw that the house and all its surroundings is already parched and is already engulfed in flames, Napoleon commanded that they should extinguish this fire quickly, but they couldn't even come close because of the amount of fire and the extent of the smoke it was. So Napoleon announced, or he commanded they should announce throughout this entire city and throughout all the villages around, saying that any man or woman that can bring him some form, some object, some vessel that belonged to the Alter Rebbe, or even a coin that he received from the Alter Rebbe's heilige hand, they'll pay him with golden rendlach for this. And they searched the entire city and they didn't find, which means either there wasn't or they were not ready to give him. As we know from other places, Napoleon was considered a sorcerer, and he was looking to hold on to a chayfetz of the Alter Rebbe, and this is the reason why the Alter Rebbe asked that they burn his whole house down. At that point, the Alter Rebbe had already crossed over the Dnieper and he caught up to the entire group, the entire entourage, and they traveled together until they came to a village. This is, we said it's Erev Shabbos Kodesh that they left. Until a half an hour before Shabbos, they reached this village and they stopped there for Shabbos. Matzah Shabbos Kodesh, they traveled the whole night, and they came on Sunday, Beis Rosh Chodesh, to the city Krasna, where the Alter Rebbe wanted to reach, and they rested there. On Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Shoftim Vav El, this is a week later, they needed to escape there as well. And in this, the Seder of the traveling was as follows, in this journey. The Agola, in which the Alter Rebbe sat, that was the first. Sorry, that was the third wagon in the order. The first one was populated with Reb Nachum, together with armed soldiers that were sent from the army. And the Seder was, when this first carriage, when it was leading the whole procession, so when they reached a fork in the road, they would ask the Alter Rebbe which direction to travel in. Al Haroiv, the Alter Rebbe would get off the wagon, in most cases, and go to the place of the fork of the road. He would lean on his stecken, on a stick, b'dveikus, cleaving to the Eibishter, he would run to dveikus, and then he would, so to speak, awake and tell them which way to travel. Sometimes the Alter Rebbe would sit in his place in the wagon, in the third wagon, and from there he would say which direction to take. Behine, by one of these forks in the road, our uncle, Reb Nachum, made a mistake and deviated from what the Alter Rebbe told him. When they came 10 parsois later, the Alter Rebbe asked, when are we coming to this and this village? When Chak Doidenu, Reb Nachum, realized that he made a mistake in the directions which the Alter Rebbe told him, he came crying, and with psychus, he screamed to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe gave a tremendous zift, a sigh from his depths, and he said very sharp, he said, Vamar Voil is, it's super good, as an enkel geht b'derech zikna, that a grandson goes in the ways of his grandfather. Olehepachu, however, if the diametrically the point opposite, if the Zayda has to go in the way that his grandson guides him. But the Alter Rebbe said he commanded they continue traveling. All the Chassidim, it was known at that point, the bracha that the Alter Rebbe, so to speak, benched himself when he left Liyadi, and he said, Yirachem Hashem Yisbarach. Hashem should have mercy, and we should come to the region of Poltava before Rosh Hashanah. And that would have been the case, however, this mistake cost them not reaching before Rosh Hashanah. This mistake in the fork caused that it had affected many problems, and Tiltulim Rabbim that came up because of this, but the Oil al Kolana, eventually this caused, sadly, the Histalkus of the Alter Rebbe in the village of Piena. From then, our uncle Reb Nachum was in tremendous pain throughout all his days, because he accused himself. He felt that he was guilty in what happened due to the mistake in the way that he so to speak, was negligent. And therefore, Chassidim always thought that that's the reason why he settled in Haditch. It's all a derivative of this mistake that he made, that he felt like he has to be connected to Alter Rebbe and, so to speak, fix this. Ois Hey, till now is what they considered initially, they thought was the reason Reb Nachum moved at the end of his days to live near Haditch, near his Zayda's team, the Alter Rebbe, to tshuva for this mistake in the fork of the road, which ultimately caused the passing of the Alter Rebbe. However, in Ois Hey, the Frierdiker is going to reveal what Reb Nachum on his own admitted to afterwards to be the real reason why he moved there. Omnam, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, at some point it happened that there was a gathering of the remnants of the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim, whoever the remainder, the surviving Chassidim, and some of the honorable Chassidim of the Mittler Rebbe, they gathered at some point in Hadich, and they sat together, they discussed in Yani Chassidus, and brought up memories, days of old, recounted, and then one of them had the breitkeit to ask Reb Nachum why he decided that he, for all practical purposes, moved his Pasha's dwelling place to live in Hadich. It's the chasach beser for you to sit, to dwell in your home in Yezhin, befrat at such an old age. It's much better for you to be together with your family. Take care of you. At that point, Reb Nachum told them the story of the beged, his garment. What's the story? The story went as follows. It was before his chasana, and tailors prepared for him clothing for the wedding. And between the garments they prepared was a katinka, this silk outer coat or pata, like. The Alter Rebbe called him his Zayda and said, "Vayirmalei Nachum, du willst Masken gewähnen, als die Katinka, die Seidene, soll sein mit Alata? Would you agree that this Katinka, this silk overcoat, and it should have a patch on it?" So he said, I answered to my Zayda, not only I don't agree, I don't want that to be the case. So the Alter Rebbe said to me, what would you want for this? That you should agree that this silk katinka should have a patch. I said, I don't want a beged with a patch, period. It's chassan. I want a whole beged, a complete beged. Parenthetically, I would point out the Rebbe once referred to the story and said Alter Rebbe was trying to break the taivas alavushim. The taiva, the loss for fitting in for clothing. So the Alter Rebbe said that he's going to promise me to learn with me if I'm ready to have a patch on this katinka. Look, he says, I didn't want. He said, the Rebbe, my Zayda, told me, if you do this, I'll promise you that you'll be iti ini b'mchitzasi, in the same partition as me in Gan Eden. This, said Reb Nachum, was poil. This had a strong effect on me. And I said to my grandfather, Tova Davar, it's good. And I asked my Zayda, do I need to want this with an emes? Or it's enough that I'll want to have this patch on my clothing, but it's going to be the Kabbalah's oil. I'm accepting it. I don't really connect with it. I'm not totally complete with it. So the Zayda responded, Avada mit an emes, for sure with an emes. To the extent, mit the emes when yechida, the deepest emes that a person can reach, from the deepest part of his soul. When I heard the Alter Rebbe's response, I was silent. I didn't say anything, because it seems like he wasn't able to bring himself to that point. And it stayed as he said that this katinka, they used to make a very long collar, like a folarim, a type of fur that was made from sable or from other types of hides, like fox and etc. When our great uncle Reb Nachum came into his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, to get a bracha before the chuppah, the Alter Rebbe, ripped off a little piece of the fur of this collar and promised him for this arichas yamin. Which means it wasn't the full-on. The Alter Rebbe wanted a patch, in which case he would be zeicha to imim chitzasi, but he needed to bring himself to wanted mitanemis. But for this, he gave arichas yamin. Says Reb Nachum, in order to correct and rectify this inyan of the katinka, that's why our uncle Reb Nachum stayed in Hadich for a few years. He would sit in the Alter Rebbe's tzion till a year and a half or 2 years before his istalkus. At that point, he had to go to Nyezhin, and what he said was that the Alter Rebbe sent with him a very special shlichus to his father. Mittler Rebbe was buried in Nyezhin, and Mesibu Shoinus, for various reasons, he was not able. He was too old, and for other reasons, to go back to Hadich. In Ois Vav, the Frierdiker Rebbe is going to describe to us how all these stories from Reb Nachum actually reached the Frierdiker Rebbe. Sagt der Frierdiker Rebbe, Ois Vav, Kvoik Tushas Doidi Zikni, my elder Vetter, which is the Rebbe Marash's brother, Rabbi Yisrael Noach of Nyezhin, he was a son-in-law of this Reb Nachum, which was his uncle, the Mittler Rebbe's son. And he was a son-in-law of the Dana Reb Nachum. He married Reb Nachum's daughter, Chana Chayka Zechron Lebracha. And he says, you should know that Kvoik Tushas Doidi Zikni, Rabbi Yisrael Noach of Nyezhin, he also married in with the family of my grandfather, which is the Rebbe Marash, which is his brother. Why so? Because Doidi, my uncle, the Rebbe Rashab's brother, the Rebbe Zalman Aaron, the brother of Adoni Moiriv Rabbi, Rabbi Kaddish, the Rebbe Rashab, married the daughter, married his daughter, the Yisrael Noach's daughter, Mar Shterna, the daughter of Rabbi Yisrael Noach of Nyezhin. And the chasana took place in Chodesh Mar Cheshvan and Tavrish Lamed Aled in Lubavitch. My great uncle, the son of the Tzemach Tzedek, the brother of Rebbe Marash, Rabbi Yisrael Noach of Nyezhin, he lived in Nyezhin. Kayitz Tavrish Lamed Aled, that summer, after the wedding of his daughter with the Razal, was after Chag HaShavuos. My uncle, the Razal, went to visit his father-in-law, Rabbi Yisrael Noach of Nyezhin, in Nyezhin, and he stayed over there until the beginning of Elul of that year. Reb Nachum was very mekarev my uncle, the Razal. Kitzur, what's happening is the Razal, the Rebbe Rashab's brother, went to visit his father-in-law, which was Yisrael Noach of Nyezhin, and at that opportunity he also met Reb Nachum, which was his wife's grandfather. He was the father-in-law of also Rabbi Yisrael Noach of Nyezhin, hence the grandfather, through marriage, the grandfather of the Razal, Rabbi Rashab's brother. And he said, he was very mekarev the Razal, and Gam Doidi, also the Razal, extremely loved to visit him at any given moment, at any opportunity, to listen to him, to hear stories from him. The Razal told me about Reb Nachum that in addition to him having a very special nature and a lichtig upon him, his hair pashut was white, his hair of his head and his beard, and he had even his eyebrows were white, and he was still, however, very mobile, very swift, and to the extent that you wouldn't be able to say about him that or notice that he's already 80-year-old. In addition to that, he used to say still stories with tremendous, he was very scrupulous, very medactic, to say it exact. He was very particular, to call each person by the exact name that he was called, and he was, b'chlal, very medactic and medayik in his seder of time. For example, he would say how many days, and he would count months, and when they would hear a story from him, it was as if it was brought to life, pashut. And in the eyes of the person that's hearing the story, mamish was able to envision this in color. When I went, this is now, the Friedrich Rebbe is describing how these stories were transmitted to him by his uncle, the Razal. So Razal tells him, when I would go to our Alter Zayda, Reb Nachum, which was the grandfather of my wife, I would think it was like I would consider it as if I'm going in to read chronicles, reading books of 70 years ago, but just like to go into that world. It was a tremendous pleasure, all just the discussions with him and his stories, even when he described Chassidus that was Shagar al Pig, would roll off his tongue. Al Roiv, they were Mamarim of the Alter Rebbe of the first years, and he would mention every b'diuk, every name of each chassid that he heard it from. Reb Nachum, he was older than the Tzemach Tzedek 2 or 3 years, older than the Tzemach Tzedek, and he's a brother-in-law. Tzemach Tzedek was a son-in-law by the Mittler Rebbe. He was a son of the Mittler Rebbe. Throughout his entire life, he did not know of any pain and any sickness. Margel Abepumi, Reb Nachum would say about the Schneerson family. Schneerson is from the Alter Rebbe. His name was Barchavich and Schneeri, but the mishpacha, he would say, Kol mishpachtenu briim heim. Our entire family are be'etzem healthy. Besides the Rabbeim, those that became Rebbe, that they were weakened, their body was weakened from Tzarasam Shal Yisrael. And he said weiter, der Zayd is given a Eisen. Our Zayda was iron. Veniti avoid kasha mit the redifus v'yisurim maklal. Had it not been for the hard work and the redifus, he was chased, and the pains that he went through, the suffering from the Bechlal, his service to the public, and Bechlal, what they caused, the redifus, Volta Gilep, Me'av Asam Shana, he would have lived 120 years. Says Reb Nachum, the Tate is given a Gibor, the Mittler Rebbe was a powerful man. Venit, the Yiddish Aniyos, had it not been for the poverty, the Yiddish poverty, on the Gzeras Yavon, and the Greek, so to speak, Gzeras that came upon the community, Volta Gilep Midem Chayos, was a younger man, versteht dem Hefresh von das Tachten, das Alien, he could have lived off the Chayos, that a younger man understands the difference, das Alien, das Tachten, nor from the Alec, and he could live off this, nor from the Alexadis, when Aniyos, due to all these decrees of the government, and this poverty, the Yidden that took to his heart, that, and it was poiled by the Zayda, that he should, Azazel im Nemen zu sich, that the Zayda should take, so to speak, my father to him. Wer hat gekent gläuben, says the Razah. Who could believe? Sorry, Reb Nachum said to the Razah about his grandfather. Who could believe on your Zayda, referring to the Tzemach Tzedek, of them Gibor, this powerful man, was flecht fasten a ganze Wochen. He would fast entire weeks, every single day, and abfasten sich, he would eat at the end of the day a piece of bread mit zikoria, maybe sugar. Und schlafen 3 Shah Meis, he would sleep for 3 hours throughout the 24-hour cycle. He should for 5 years be so sick, and such a Bal Yisurim has such pain. And my uncle, the Razah, heard from him all the details of the Mesirah, of the Misnagdim against Alter Rebbe, the liberation. He knew everything with all the Pratei details, and he told him all the details of how the Alter Rebbe escaped from the Yadi, all the tribulations of the way, and the Histalkus, and the way they brought the Alter Rebbe from Vienna to Hadich. All this was written down exactly the way he heard it, and it was written in clear oisias and in short. And this is all written down by Reb Nachum. He had it written down. And when my uncle was in Tafresh Samach Vav, he lived together with us B'nai Desha, he showed these ksavim. One second. Could be this is written down by the Razah. The Razah wrote it. And he showed this, and together with other Rishimis that he wrote, he showed it to my father, to the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab enjoyed it immensely.